We gotta go on screen with this. We gotta go on screen. Cause I know it from the start. Baby, when you broke my heart, that I never come again. I'm sure you that I will. Your love and mine. All those songs I said that I love you. Hey, that's the way to break season 2 in. That's the way to do it.
Woo! Return up to be. Return up to be.
Once again, hey. I felt that. I felt that in my bones.
Felt good. Felt good.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Welcome back.
Woo! 2B is back. It is great to be back.
That's right. And as you already should know, I'm Ty.
And this is Joe. And welcome back to the 2B
podcast. That's right. And we're two Black educators. In case you forgot, we're hailing from Boston. And we are doing everything, anything that surrounds Black excellence.
We heard that. Black excellence is what we are trying to embody, what we are trying to get you to see and get you to experience even through this podcast and all of the good stuff. We still vibing. Like Black excellence in music. I mean,
all the way. All the way. You feel me? Joe, can you believe it's already October 8th, 2020?
No, absolutely not. There has been so much that has happened. Life, this honestly just feels like one long month that has not ended. It's hard to believe that 2020 actually has progressing because since March to now, I'm like, what is 2020?
Somehow I felt like some days life was on pause, the other days it was on fast forward. Then we skipped some tracks. I don't know what's happening. And 2020 is clearly a double disc. Clearly a double album.
Not a double vision, double disc.
Clearly, it's Nelly sweatsuit. Clearly.
Okay. Oh my gosh! When people ask what day it is, there are days.
2020. That's what day it is. 2020. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Well, it is nice to have some sense of normalcy here with you being back after a very long break. And we thank you for your patience while we were just lots of change, even while things were staying the same. So much has changed. And that's why the theme of season 2's episode, the theme of 2B season 2 is our pivot perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we are going to talk about this season is about shifting our perspective.
That's right.
Why is that necessary, Ty?
You know what? We've been through so much, not only as a community, as a country. And I mean, I said that in past tense, we are going through so much, right? We're still in the midst of it. That it's at this point in time, we have to start to change the narrative. We have to change our perspective and think forward. We have to do some forward thinking as to what do we do next? How do we embody excellence? And more or less, how as a community do we come together, right? We really have to come together, community. If not now, then when? We need each other.
We need each other. And honestly, if we're going to get through this, we need to shift our perspective because if we keep focusing on the chaos that is consuming us, we will also go crazy.
True.
So we're going to try and let's be frank. Shifting our perspective doesn't mean easy. Shifting our perspective doesn't even mean that it sounds fluffy and light and nice. It just means that we are making a shift from, let's say, the average explanation that you've been receiving to something that we are working on in our lives. But before we dive too much into that, Ty, what's new? Before we get into school, because today's episode, we're going to focus on the newest experiencing, which is going back to school. But before that, Ty, what's new? How's it feel to be back?
Listen, so much is going on in my life. I have to say that I have been one of the few blessed folks in 2020. So many good things, so many positive things happened in my life. And those of you who know me really well, who are close to me, you know the countdown is on. The countdown to baby Adeyemi is on. Woo! Our due date is coming around the corner. I'm just ready for. I've been talking to my wife's belly for weeks, saying let her out, bring my daughter home. Let's go.
We
Let's
ready.
go. That's right. That's right.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait. That is so exciting. My news, I don't really have anything to top that, but today something that was really cool for me was I met the author Carol Anderson of White Rage. Also has a new book out, No One. Oh geez, this is not great. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of her book, but she has a new book out and it's about voter suppression. So she came and spoke to our class about how we can make grassroots movements and how she said this beautiful thing that advocacy necessitates knowing history. And I was like,
okay.
And so in fangirl, style and just being Joe, of course I was like, can we take a Zoom selfie? So you can Carol Anderson.
Shout out.
That was my hype of the day.
No, that's dope. That's dope, right? Because it's one thing to read, authors and writers that have that were coming from a different time and place, but to be in the present and be able to speak with them, get a deeper understanding, to have a conversation about what is happening now since you wrote that piece. Man, that's powerful. That's empowering conversation.
It was. So please check her out. Buy her book from a Black-owned bookstore because they are must reads. So I guess we should just jump in, Ty. We've been teaching for a week and a half.
About that, yeah.
How's that been?
Listen, when you talk about a perspective pivot, my perspective has really changed because I got to give a shout out to, I teach 9th grade English language arts in the Boston area. And I have to give a shout out to my 9th graders because when I tell you they came into the school year ready to rock, they came in with a new attitude. Right now, we all understand there's a lot that's going on. So much is going on behind the screen that I don't know about with my students. But my students came in with this breath of fresh air, right? They came in with a full understanding like, hey, we're in this remote space. We're going to make the best of it. We're going to laugh. We're going to joke. We're going to ask the teacher to share our screens and then promote our own YouTube videos, all kind of stuff. But it has been a wonderful experience thus far. The connection is not the same, but I'm not looking for it to be the same, right? I'm not looking for the connection to be the same as in person. I'm looking for it to be still a connection that is impactful and meaningful. And so far, I have to say, I feel like what my students and I have developed, it is impactful.
Absolutely. What you just said surmised exactly how I felt. I've been telling people the beginning of this year has probably been the best start to any year I've had. Year I've had. These kids, my beautiful Black and brown 9th graders, came in to show up and show out. I thought, like, I've had 90% attendance in most of my classes. I honestly was dreading going back to school. I was so nervous. So nervous. Like, honestly, March through June, oh my goodness. They were damaging.
I can imagine.
Oh my gosh. And just thinking that I was going to start the new year, just picking up from that, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. But, my anxiety was through the roof. And then to meet them, gone. I've been healed. I've been restored. They are amazing. The amount of excitement they have to learn, the amount of excitement they have to meet one another, even through this virtual community.
That part.
Amazing. It's amazing. So I honestly, I have to say that it's so far so good. There are a lot of things that are working well.
We have to, as adults, I think sometimes we try to shield our children from everything that we think is going to be a negative for them. When in fact, we need to provide them with more agency, more opportunities to advocate for themselves and listen to their voices, right? Elevate our students' voices because they will tell you what is wrong, what's not working, what they need to be successful. And so, for example, I can say that my students shifted my perspective because I think that they have reveled in this moment of online learning. They are technologically savvy. right? They're used to using all of the systems that some teachers are just catching up with: Google Docs, Google Classroom, Nearpod, and Peer Deck, and so many different systems, right? We just have to remind ourselves that our students are more adaptable than we give them credit for. Young people are able to change and shift at a moment's notice, and we need to remember that.
We absolutely do.
Just set high expectations, and I'm telling you, they will meet them.
They will absolutely rise. But speaking of those expectations, how do the expectations shift, though, when we are in a Zoom room versus a face-to-face? How do I keep those high expectations? Like, what are you doing to keep those high expectations for our students?
First of all, I think you have to shift your pedagogy, right? You have to especially focus in on how am I communicating with my students. So, for example, I am trying to hit the spectrum of communication. There are posts that I put up on my Google Classroom stream. There are videos that I make, just a recap of the week, especially for my students that may have missed a class, to say, hey, these are the things that we went over. Here's some great moments from the week, and here's some things to look forward to. I also email a lot with my students, as we've discussed in class. Email is the most professional level of communication in the sense of most people email these days, right? So there are sometimes you might work for a company and never actually physically meet your boss. We know so many people are working remotely and they communicate through email. Another thing that I've done is I've created a newsletter, a little virtual newsletter, a cool newsletter, right?
So good,
not as many words, but more images. I just want to give them as much time with me so that they feel like, they're getting to know me a little bit and connect with me. And then we'll parlay that connection into, the literature, into the academics, into the curriculum. So I really think your pedagogy has to be, how am I communicating outside of the normal ways? And then, of course, we have apps that we use to communicate with parents as well. And I text my students. They text, I text. I want to meet them where they are. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I think meeting them where they are is super important, and just taking our time. Something that I've been doing, and I coach 2 classes. Shout out to them because I am learning so much from them. So 2 parts is taking our time and also being receptive to what other excellent teachers are doing.
Yes.
And adapting my pedagogy. So something I learned from one of my co-teach, shout out to Dana, was this pieces of me. So once a week, at the end of the week, each student signs up to show like a little piece of them that maybe we wouldn't have gotten to see at the big, like if we were in person, that we're not getting to see now. So I was like, oh, Dana, say what, say less, did it. And it's been going really well, because the truth is, and this actually came from my other co-teacher, Sav, he was like, remember, maybe I wouldn't have invited you into my home. When this is on, you are in my house right now. It is personal. So this idea of like mandating, turn on your camera, or you're not here. It's like, whoa.
Where's the grace in that? Where's the grace? Where's the grace?
Exactly. So we have been doing a lot of trying to like get them to turn their camera on, even if it's briefly, in ways that make them feel safe and secure in doing so, trying to give them advanced time so that they know. Some of our students feel super comfortable. That's great. Keep them on. Be an example. But understanding and explaining that participation doesn't look like having your camera on. Just like in face-to-face, how many students we have? You're sitting there in class and like, that's not participating just because.
Wake up, Mr. West. Yes.
So being okay with the fact that maybe I'm not seeing your face right now, but I'm hearing you talk, you're engaging, you're helping your peers, you're giving examples, you're sharing videos, you're still participating, you're still here, you're with us, we're building community, and just rethinking what it means to participate. And as a result, I really feel like I'm really bonding with these students really quickly, actually. So it's been a blast.
You can still be present, just listening, right? You can still be affirming just by listening, right? By actively listening. So we have to remember that. And I think one other feature, since so many classes are being held on Zoom or Google Meet, is the use of the chat box, right? Some students, we know that they're shy. They don't necessarily want to hear their voice or have other students hear their voice. Use the chat box as your friend. Sometimes I turn the chat off, right? As a way to encourage them to use their voices. And other times I allow them to use the chat as a way to communicate with me or to communicate with their classmates. And then the other thing I think is really powerful, the way that we in class sometimes we give one of our students the dry erase marker and say, hey, go to the board, you teach this. Let them share their screens.
Yes.
One of the most powerful things I've seen this week is I sent my students in the breakout rooms as we deconstructed and worked on a short story, and they were sharing their screen. I didn't even tell them to do that. They were in there sharing their screen saying, this is the part of the text that I'm copying, and this is what I'm going to list as my reasoning. And I said, my God. Oh, they're here working. I just left the room. I didn't want to interrupt.
My heart is full hearing that story. Oh my goodness. And to me, this for me, just listening to that, it goes contrary to the belief that remote learning, you can be successful in remote learning, that we must go back in person, or that we need to do a hybrid model. What do you think about this rush to kind of go back to the way things were?
I do understand. Let me start there. I understand the need and the desire to go back, right? And it's more than just, some folks seem to think that, some educators and some outside the education space think that parents only want their children to go back because school is a babysitting service for them. And I have to say that is not the case for many, if not most parents, that is just a babysitting service. They look at school as the vehicle to their success. They understand that their children's ability to gain and retain knowledge is going to benefit them in the future. And then more so than that, there are a lot of parents, they don't have another option, right? Sometimes I think we forget about that in this pandemic, we have been stripped down to the bones of the bare minimum. So many families have lost homes, they've lost cars, they've lost jobs, they've lost family members, right? So many families are at a deficit right now that we have to remember that sometimes having their child at home is more beneficial, not in an academic sense, but perhaps in regards to their family dynamics. So I understand all of that. But I would say that if the focus is on creating a space that's going to be successful remotely, and we put our resources, our knowledge, our effort into that, we'll come up with a better space. Too many, I think, school districts, schools across the country, they spend so much time double dutching in and out. Are we going to go hybrid? Are we going to go remote? Are we going to go full remote? Are we going to just send them all to school? What are we going to do? Right? And they spent weeks and months doing that instead of focusing on, okay, what is it that the teachers need to be successful in regards to providing their curriculum, reaching every student, providing a safe space for each student, and then let's implement that and give them what they need. Instead, it was a lot of, I don't know.
I mean, you're an English teacher, right? You use Venn diagrams.
Mm-hmm.
I heard between the middle that shows what is in both sections is that online would be a part. So to me, what I would have liked to have seen is that, we're not sure of the plans, and throw a bunch of PD and helpful tools at us to make sure that we were going to be successful online. Because no matter what, we were going to start remote. Even if we went hybrid. Hybrid means remote and in person. So giving us the skills to bolster our ability to teach online would have been extremely helpful, so we didn't have to go out and do it ourselves.
For example, right? So many of these systems that we're using, whether it be Nearpod, whether it be Peer Deck, whether it be Quizzes, Kahoot, it would have been much more helpful to have some training, some professional development surrounding how to utilize these systems, how to utilize these structures in your classroom, and do it in a way that's going to make sense for your room, right? Yeah. Maybe one application works better for English, another one works better for math, and then help teachers formulate, okay, this is what I used to do in a class. This is how it manifests in a remote sense. I think that would have been so much better. Sometimes I've seen, just in general, I've seen lists. Here's 25 of the best applications to use during remote learning. Talk about overwhelming. It's like, okay.
Where to begin? So you just throw it out.
Right.
And I don't mean give it to us 2 weeks before school starts either. Okay, just saying. And my whole thing is thinking about perspective pivot is that remote learning can be excellent. And we are not through this pandemic. So there's no reason for us to be thinking that we will be going back and resuming school as it was. We're not done. So we need to keep being creative in how we are adjusting to this time. And the truth is, I hope even after the pandemic, we don't go back. Completely in the same way. One, because of the inequities that I will not even bother getting into, and you know about them, I hope. but also because some kids right now are thriving. Some students really need this. What about our anxious students? How would this help them on those days where it's like, I can't, physical school building, not today. Like, I want to learn, but going in the building is a barrier for me right now. No problem. Learn. Go ahead.
Listen,
learn. Although I really hope we stop suspending students. So hopefully that won't be a use. But why can't we take this and shift? But if we are not willing to do that right now, when we are still relatively in the thick of it, or at least in the weeds, nothing makes me think that we are going to do this when we're not.
Right. And to your point, I have 3 great examples that have already occurred in the first 2 weeks about how students still have that zest for learning, but there have been extenuating circumstances, something else that would have gotten in their way had they had to come into the school building. Just today, I had a student email me and say, "Mister, I missed class. I only showed up in the last 5 minutes because I was up till 2 a.m. because my dog had puppies last night. And so I was caring for those puppies." I said, I sent her back a nice email. "Okay, new puppy mom, I see you. All right." And then, I ran down to this, said, "This is what we covered in class. If you have any questions, let me know. And I hope to see you tomorrow." Right. But that was an example of her letting me know that I still want to learn. I just wasn't able to get there today. I had another student that told me, she came on, she didn't have her camera on. Normally she does. She said, "Mister, I got really bad cramps today, but I'm here. I'm still here." And I said, "First of all, you didn't have to share that, but I appreciate that you did. But listen, the fact that you are still here, it speaks volumes, right? Because you could have shut it down. You could have said, I'm not even, even though I can stay in the bed, I'm not even going to log on." But she still went ahead and logged on, even though she wasn't feeling herself. And then I had another young man who, he has a job, and he said, "Listen, I had to go into work last night. I didn't get off till midnight. And then when I got home, I couldn't sleep. And I was thinking about not logging in this morning. But then I just remember we were getting ready to start a new story. And so I had to log in." I said, "Man, look at you, man, balancing these heavy priorities, school and work. And you're only, 14, 15 years old?" I just couldn't be more proud of all of those students, all of my students in general, because they have decided on their own, school learning is important to me, right? And now that I'm in this remote space, I have options. I can balance my other obligations along with school. And that's one of the beauties of remote learning.
Absolutely. 100%. And congratulations that you are creating a zest for learning in your classroom. Like, thinking about English for me personally, like, I don't have a great experience with English. To have a teacher be able to pull in and be like, "Hey, come on, you want to do this," or to do that. And then when they have the opportunity to be like, "I'm not coming," instead be like, "Wait, I actually kind of want to be there." And I'm trying to create that exact same thing in my science classroom because I just feel like writing and critical thinking are just the things that propel and create contributing members of society, which, no offense, other subjects, but like English and science are that beautiful marriage.
Yes.
So just generally, because I'm sure you're incorporating this in your classroom, but generally speaking, we're in a dual pandemic, newly dubbed dual pandemic.
Name it.
That the originating pandemic was and will remain until solved racism. So the viral is the new pandemic. How have you seen the school respond? Do you feel like anti-racism just generally is being more incorporated? There was a big push for social emotional learning. What have you seen?
I've seen different things in different spaces. I will say I have seen a heightened awareness surrounding anti-racism. I have seen educators being more considerate of what they're saying, being more thoughtful about the images they're presenting to their students. And I think that there's a push in the right direction. And I certainly don't expect that, in 1 month, a few weeks of time, that we will have a complete changeover, a complete transition from the place we were to a place that is more abolishing, more welcoming, more creating a sense of belonging. But I will say that what I have gathered from many educators that they focus on building relationships to begin the school year. And that is paramount. That is key. You should be really focusing on that throughout the year, right? That's not something that you start the year with. It's not like in the old days where teachers, "All right, here's my list of 10 rules," right? "If you do this, this is the consequence. If you do this, it's a phone call home." and then you just stop after the first day. You just point to your anchor chart and say, "They're the rules. Remember that. This is not like that." Relationship building is ongoing, right? And I heard a quote from one of my professors at Harvard earlier today. Actually, Dr. Irvin Scott said, "Technology can't stop humanity from coming through." I said, "That's it, Dr. Scott." Right? Because you have to remember that they're humans. They have a life. You have a life. So we need to extend grace both ways. Both ways. You know, one of my students, I came on the Zoom 2 minutes late. Mr. A, he was tapping his watch. I said I was helping another student. They said, "All right." They said, "I understand, but we need you to be on time." I said, "Okay, I appreciate you extending that grace." They called me out a little bit, but I appreciate that.
Oh my goodness, because they're learning that you are holding them accountable and they also hold you accountable. And that is beautiful. Yeah, in thinking about anti-racism, I think that it's come up in a lot of places. And although I don't expect, like you said, in a month that all of a sudden there's like an upheaval of what was done before. But I am wondering how much of this will be simply talk, simply, well, we have mentioned anti-racism. We have mentioned the importance of social emotional learning and building relationships. Seen. Like, how much of it is that one and done? Because where's the accountability? You know, where is that, like, no, this is how it's going to be done. Like you were saying about looking at a list of 25 different apps. I feel like sometimes we look at a list of all these different buzzwords for building relationships and trauma-informed practices and culturally responsive teaching and critical race. And it's like, wait, I don't know how to do all of this. Who's going to teach me? Who is going to tell me that actually giving a test on day 3 is probably not the move? Like,
problematic. Day 3?
Day 3. And I'm just saying, if you are at a place where what about it's like, no, you're going to be marked absent if you don't turn on your Zoom camera. Who is that? Yes. Who is there? Who is there monitoring? Who is there saying, actually, the reason that we're not doing this and rooting it in anti-racist theory? Who's doing that? So even though you're saying it, that's not enough.
You know what? I think that's where we step in. As an educator community, see something, say something, right? We have to hold each other accountable, really and truly. Because if those type of things are happening and no one's saying anything, it can't be incumbent upon the school administration, the school leader, for you to send an email to someone in that moment, perhaps. And if not in that moment, later on, it has to be addressed by a fellow educator. And I think that if anything, what this moment in time has given us is given us a time to understand that our voices matter and we need to use them to speak up, right? And you don't always have to call someone out. You can call them in, right? There's that term. You can call them in and say, "Hey, let's have a conversation because I overheard this, or I've heard that this has occurred, or I've seen this happen, and I want to discuss that because that made me uncomfortable. And I can imagine that some of your students may feel the same way." So I think that it's really incumbent upon us now as an education community to see it and say, we're not having that.
100%. And I was doing my reading on my little reading corner. So unfortunately, my book is still sitting there. So I'm going to paraphrase this quote that I wanted to share by Dr. Bettina Love. And in her book, We Want to Do More Than Survive, she talks about, and she is an abolitionist teacher, and she talks about the importance of bringing in education as a means for joy and enlightenment, and several more adjectives. And I'm just wondering how we are making sure that is happening, right? How are we dismantling the things that we used to do that kind of keep us shackled mentally, like emotionally? They break our spirit, or she would say spirit murder our students. What are we doing as teachers in our classrooms to bring them joy, to bring life, to speak life? And so that's my thing, that it's like during these like protests and this racial like reckoning and the George Floyd murders and Breonna Taylor, the injustice, excuse me, that remains.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of talking that we are doing, but not a lot of accountability. So my perspective pivot in this one is accountability. And like, that's what I'm looking for. Accountability peer to peer. Those difficult conversations that we're always encouraging people to have, and accountability from like the top, from our supervisors.
I want to highlight this comment that we got from David, because I think he's talking along the same lines as you, Joe. And he says, we are all in different places growing on the journey. Iron sharpens iron for sure, right? And that's the truth. Iron does sharpen iron. We all have to remain in a posture of learning. And I say all, I mean all, because there's a lot that I need to unlearn. And I know that's the position I've been in for the last few months, because I've grown up in this system. I've grown up in a system that has promoted racial oppression. I've grown up in a system that has presented low expectations for black and brown students. I have grown up in a system that told me that I was less than my white counterpart, even though my grades suggested otherwise. I've grown up in a system that told me there were places I could not ascend to. So I have to then remember that was ingrained in my brain. Even if I tried to reject it, it was still told to me. So I have to unlearn those things as I try to present a better opportunity, a better vision of what is ahead of my students.
Yes, absolutely. And as Dr. Beverly Tatum says in her book, Why Are the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? That many of us have experienced the same education that our students are going through. So
same traumas.
Right, the same traumas. So we have those same gaps. So as you were saying, Ty, you learn, as I myself learn, as we learn, we must go forth and educate those who are not. Educate the youth coming behind and who are going to and continue to be our future. That is what she says the cycle must be. So I agree completely. And that to me is the accountability measure built in right there. That's the impetus to go and educate yourself. And it is the impetus to go and share it in creating our better world, because our kids are holding us accountable.
Exactly. And, the other perspective pivot I think that educators need to take, especially classroom educators, is that you have to think beyond your classroom, right? So often we've been used to teaching in these silos. And now, if for nothing else, remote learning has shown us that our voices carry far beyond the four walls of our classroom, right? The things that we present to our students carry far beyond what we thought they did before. And I want educators in the classroom to really think about, it shouldn't be that you are relying on your school leaders to provide all the training, all professional development, all the necessary information for growth to happen in your school. For example, you just said that, 2 books that you just quoted from Dr. Beverly Tatum and from Dr. Bettina Love, you need to present those to the staff, right? You bring that to the staff and say, hey, this is something that I came across that I know we all can benefit from. And so I'm going to provide the PD. I'm going to provide training, because I want our school to elevate and rise together. And I think that all classroom teachers should really focus on that. And there's something that I have on my heart that I'm not going to share just yet, but I'm working on it, and I'm going to present it to my school as well.
I am looking forward to being a privileged recipient of your knowledge, Ty.
Cut it out.
I mean it. But thinking about uplifting teachers, and this is a slight shift to we're expanding outside of the school. Some teachers are being really pushed to go back to school. And even though people might say, well, that's a personal decision, in some places that is coming down to it not necessarily being that personal decision. It's seeming like there might be disciplinary action, and it seems like teachers weren't even brought to the table in the first place. Thoughts?
Wow. That's heavy on my heart, because I think about our episode 3 guest from season 1, Christian Lopez, a good friend of mine who teaches right outside of Atlanta. And I don't think he minds sharing it, because he shared it on his social media, that after he returned to school, forced to go back to school, or otherwise to face repercussions, he has since contracted COVID-19. And I know there'll be some folks that say, well, we don't know where he got it. But I can tell you that through our conversations, he has been very diligent about not going out and about, wearing his mask, washing his hands, taking all the necessary precautions, because not only does he live with his wife, his grandmother lives with him as well. So he has several people that he needs to protect at home. And since he's contracted the virus, as we know, it is highly contagious, and so has his grandmother, and so has his wife. And so these are the things that these are real people, and these are real examples of why we should not be forcing people to go back to school. Now, I understand the numbers are different in different places, so there may be different ways that we formulate a return to school. But the idea that all schools should go back in session simply so students can go back, so we can help the economy, all that it tells me is that human lives are dispensable and disposable. That's all that tells me. That's all that tells me. Because what you're saying now is that each teacher, each counselor, each administrator, each custodian, everyone that works in a school building, you know what? Your lives don't matter as much as the dollars we need to make.
Correct. And depending on which school district you're in, you're especially saying your Black life and your brown life does not matter. Because we cannot pretend that the racial inequities that persist in the healthcare system did not carry over into the viral pandemic that we are experiencing through COVID-19, and why you see increased overrepresentation in Black, Latin, and Indigenous populations. You absolutely can't say that. And Ty, to your point, saying that, well, we all have different schools have different demographics. Something that I've been saying is we have the opportunity right now to use statistics for anti-racism. And what I mean by that is that, okay, specifically in our area, we have said that at 4% testing positive, that's when teachers get the option to or not to go back to school. But in thinking about that, each school serves a different percentage of the various towns that create Boston. So if we wanted to really be equitable, we would be thinking about, wait, what are the percentages that Madison Park serves of this population, and thinking about those numbers in isolation, thinking about the Curly in isolation, thinking about the Timilty in isolation, instead of doing this blanket, when it's this, you'll go back. Because we're not all dealing with the same experience.
Let me ask this question. I want to push back on it a little bit and ask you this question. What about the students that are struggling through remote learning? What about the students who have lost internet access for a various amount of time? What about the students that feel that they don't have a space to really focus, to really set their mind, set the intention for learning in their household, because of whether it's just too many people, it's too chaotic, where they live is just not conducive to them having that level of focus? What about them? What do you say to those students?
Thank you for that question. I'd say that we are really, really fortunate that teachers, even though they were not brought to the table, have come up with a solution to bring in our most needy while not bringing in the entire teaching population. So if you've heard of the technology pod model, that is an ideal situation and for students who, the 10, 20, maybe 30 students who need that, right? But instead, we are bringing those 30 students and 100 teachers, plus 55 paras, plus all of the other social workers and nurses back into school. So now we have about 200 people in this building, when we really could have, because considering that they would be 15 on one day, which requires maybe 2 adults watching and still being taught remotely, we could reduce those numbers while still providing that need and keeping staff and students safer, because we know that the less people in contact, the better. But again, there's no pivot perspective to allow for creative solutions. All I'm hearing is, no, that won't work, And I'm like, are we trying to do what is best? How are we making it so schools are not a hotspot even upon our return? And I hear creative solutions being presented and immediately shut down. And you know what's funny? Today essentially
Mhm.
was an example of what a technology pod could look like. And sometimes even the school will lose power. So like that, our internet connection. But there are creative solutions that can work for our most needy because there is no reason to neglect them. And nothing I am saying, no, there's no desire that I have to say, oh, I'm sorry, but your learning matters less. No, we can find ways. And my perspective pivot is one, bring teachers to the table because we have creative solutions and we are the people on the floor. Two,
Mhm.
listen to the solution with an open mind, even if it sounds crazy or like something you've never heard before. Because remember, we're in a time that we've never been in before. It
Mm.
probably requires a solution you've never heard before, right? And I'm not even saying that to be patronizing, but we forget that it's like, well, that's not been done before. I read somewhere that the most dangerous phrase that we could use is we can't do it because it's never been done before.
Mm.
Like that is exactly where we are with increase with creative solutions. So my perspective pivot would be, how do we help our neediest while still maintaining their safety and the safety of staff? It is possible. It is possible. And use statistics for anti-racism.
Mm. Joe, you said a whole lot. I think we need to sit with that. I really think we should just end it right there because there's a lot that you've said that not only do we need to think about that, all of our listeners, the people in power, the school leaders, how do we serve our most neediest while still providing a safe environment? Good question.
That is a great.
And as you mentioned, we're in unprecedented times. So it's going to take a solution that we have never had before. Thank you for that, Joe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you know me, I always like to end with a little quote. Progress is impossible. Excuse me. Progress is impossible without change. And those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything.
Well, okay. Perspective pivot. That's what that sounds like. Indeed. Before we close out, I do want to give a quick shout out. You guys can see my shirt, Protect Black Children. I have to give a shout out. This is a shirt from Your Neighborhood Scholar. You can find them on IG at Your Neighborhood Scholar. And they are a phenomenal company, Black owned. And this shirt says it all for me. Not only do I have this shirt, it also came with some stickers as well that I have on the back of my laptop. Protect Black Children. Yes, we do love a good sticker, right? It's the child in us.
Oh my goodness. Well, do you want to tell them where to find us? By the way, we are still, if you haven't caught up on season 1, you definitely want to. We are available wherever podcasts are found. So tell a friend to tell a friend who tells a friend and come back and tune in. By the way, because we are busy people, we are working full time, and I call it school work and school -work.
Zoom.
And working. Zoom.
All day long, literally. 7:30 to 9:30. Lord have mercy.
And something that was a big perspective pivot for us was the realization that we have to make sure that we are replenishing. And it was a hard look at what we could and could not do on a weekly basis. So you will forgive us and understand and have patience with us that we will only be on air every other week. So our next date is April 14th, which happens to be my mother's birthday. So we'll give her a shout. And
are you sure about that date?
Oh, well, hold on. 15.
I was like, I don't think that's the right date.
So 15. Remember how I started and was like the days? What are days? My bad. So on April 15th, we will be back at our new time at 8 p.m.
Listen, this has been just so much. I just feel nourished. I feel refreshed. I feel rejuvenated being here with you, Joe, being here with our listeners. Thank you for all the folks that commented. Thank you for all the viewers, all the listeners. We really appreciate your push So many of you reached out to us and said, when is 2B coming back? Because we really want to hear your voices. We love your perspectives. And here we are presenting you with a perspective pivot. We have so many phenomenal guests lined up. And if you have anybody that you would like to see featured on our 2B podcast, send us an email at 2B podcast on Instagram or Facebook, or 2bpodcast@gmail.com.
100%. And if you're not following us, follow us. And until then, remember
to be good to yourself,
to be true to yourself,
and to educate yourself. Hey.
Bye, y'all.
Peace.